Amazing transformation. Humble farmer bullied over old clothes reveals his incredible success. Jack stood in the fading light, his worn-out boots caked with mud, and the fabric of his shirt frayed at the edges. He felt the piercing gaze of his neighbors, just behind the shimmering glass of their immaculate cars, tales of contempt hanging heavy behind them like raindrops waiting to fall. Just a farmer, they whispered. Their voices echoed in the recesses of his mind, a constant jab that reminded him of the distance between his reality and theirs. These jeers had become an unwelcome backdrop to his life, the reflection of a man who dedicated his existence to the land, but often felt like an outcast in a town enamored with corporate glory. Yet, beneath those roughened hands, a deep love for the soil, a resolute spirit molded by generations, coursed through Jack's veins. After a grueling day, he sank into the creaky embrace of an old chair, a familiar weight pressing down on his chest. Was this life destined for him? Just a simple purveyor of crops while the world whirled by with its promise of prosperity and gloss? He clenched his fists, muscles taut, battling with the unease that surfaced every time he gazed at the emerald rows stretching across his fields. But then came an unexpected glimmer. A book abandoned by a visiting university student, its pages filled with ideas whispering change. Night after night, Jack snuffed out the dim light of his old lamp and surrendered to studies that painted an image of possibility, of a farm not bound by antiquated methods but illuminated by sustainable practices. Fueled by intrigue and desperation to uplift not only his land, but himself, he grappled with the knowledge as it unfolded. Arthur, his elderly neighbor, guided him with wisdom bound by suffering. They exchanged stories of struggles, dreams caught in the harsh wind. Jack felt the anticipation build within him, a fierce hope that perhaps, just perhaps, he could silence their taunts with tangible success. As he applied what he learned, vibrant crops sprouted where despair once hung like dusk. The harvest was extraordinary. It was his validation, yet the very thought of sharing this triumph with the townsfolk twisted his gut. Would they see him differently or merely brush aside his efforts, sunk in their preconceived notions? His heart raced with discord, pride weighed against fear. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Just as Jack's budding confidence bloomed, the ominous arrival of a corporate giant shadowed his dreams. They wanted his land, the very soil that had sheltered his family's memories for generations. The choice crushed him. Accept the buyout that promised wealth or cling desperately to the only life he knew. The voices of scorn echoed louder. He felt their judgment probing through the air. How could he stand before them, unmasked, vulnerable, when the polished lawyer representing the corporation stood poised like a vulture on the horizon? The faces that once turned away were suddenly present, scrutinizing him anew. As the sky darkened, so did Jack's heart. He took a step toward the townsfolk gathered, resolve warring with doubt, as the palpable tension surrounded him, and just as he opened his mouth to unveil the truth that could free him, thunder rolled, a storm brewing, unbearably loud now, each drop a harbinger of uncertainty. Would they finally see beyond his old clothes, or would the storm ruin everything he had fought for? The first drop hit, sharp against his skin, as he froze, gripped with fear, wondering if he had the strength to speak, or if the tempest would wash away his dreams forever. The rain poured down as Jack's heart raced to catch up with the chaos around him. Each droplet felt like the weight of expectation, another voice clamoring for his attention. He looked out over the people gathered, each face a portrait of skepticism, some tinged with curiosity, but mostly disbelief. Would they recognize the effort behind his labor, or would they forever view him through the narrow lens of their prejudice? His mind churned, echoing with internal debate. The corporate suit was waiting expectantly, as if anticipating an answer crafted under pressure, a promise of lucrative wealth, a soft bed of security. They had painted the offer in vivid colors, but the starkness of his reality was etched deep against the backdrop of those emerald fields he had nourished from the roots. They didn't offer him a choice. They stripped him of his identity, rendering his labor trivial within the grand scheme they orchestrated. As the downpour intensified, clarity struck. What if he embraced this moment not as a plea for acceptance but as a declaration of his identity? He imagined the past, every dirt-streaked day, the toil and sweat, the triumphs he had earned in silence. His resolve prompted a reconsideration of what it meant to fight for one's land, not with fists, but with knowledge, tenacity, and innovation. Jack took a deep breath, the thunder rumbling like an engine starting within. Maybe it was time to confront the silence that had overshadowed his achievements. This storm wasn't just a deluge. It was an opportunity. He would speak, and the rain could multitask as both an adversary and an ally, cleansing the barriers that had separated him from the townsfolk. He stepped forward, battling the tides of his own doubts, each stride bolstered by newfound courage. The rain plastered his hair against his forehead, and he caught glimpses of Arthur's weathered smile in the crowd, offering silent encouragement that pierced through the anxiety. What I grow isn't just crops. It's a legacy, Jack began, his voice steady despite the torrents. A legacy enriched with sustainable methods learned through hardship, and today, I stand before you as proof that transformation is possible. I have a choice, and so do you. He paused, eyes sweeping the assembled faces, testing the waters of their comprehension. I refuse to succumb to their vision for my home. I want to show you something new while staying rooted in the tradition that shaped me. Each word built momentum. The hesitation that had clung to him began to dissipate, replaced by an exhilarating sense of purpose. However, the polished lawyer was quick to respond, a sneer plastered across his carefully manicured facade. You think you can hold out against our offer? This is merely a fleeting dream. You'll lose everything. This is the way businesses work. Jack felt the descending weight of doubt once again. Was he prepared to face this adversary? Was his resolve solid enough against the faceless threats of corporate greed? It was a stark reality check, yet the memory of what he had endured pulled hard on his heartstrings. What I offer is about more than just farming, he shouted, the storm raging alongside him. It's about owning the narrative of success, not having it dictated by those who don't know the land. The crowd shifted uneasily, some nodding while others remained unmoved, burdened by the fear conditioning shaped by the very wealth Jack rejected. He had opened a window. Whether they were ready to step through remained uncertain. The rain slowed to a drizzle, leaving behind a palpable silence punctuated by unsettled whispers. He wondered if this response would forge connections or deepen divides. One thing was clear: he stood at the precipice of change, destined to discover whether his altercation would yield support or isolation, and that fear of the unknown gripped him tighter than before. As he faced the lawyer once again, Jack's resolve crystallized. The moment had arrived to confront what he had always feared yet longed for. What lay behind the next turn? Would he harness the momentum of this newfound self-assertion or be swept away in the prevailing winds of doubt? The weight of his future hung in the balance, an existential cliff he could no longer ignore. The moments that followed felt like suspended time, the air electrified with tension. Jack locked eyes with the lawyer, an embodiment of the corporate machine that sought to erase him. There was something about that gaze suffocatingly persuasive yet hollow, devoid of the warmth he'd been raised to cherish. The attorney thrived in the realm of intimidation while Jack stood rooted in the earth he knew, grounded in authenticity. He had spoken boldly, yet doubts lingered, echoing through his mind like the fading rumble of thunder. He needed a plan, a shift in strategy that capitalized on the small victory he'd just tasted. The crowd was still watching, their expressions a mosaic of judgment and intrigue. Jack shifted his focus on them, realizing he had to navigate their uncertainty just as deftly as he faced the legal opponent. He took another deep breath, and clarity washed over him. What if he crafted a way to invite the townsfolk into his vision? Perhaps his battle was not merely against the corporation but against apathy, fear, and inertia that crept into their perceptions as well. He would need not only to refute the lawyer's claims but to ignite a spark within his audience, a collective commitment to embrace a future that honored their labor and aspirations. With new resolve, Jack silhouetted his next words against the dim backdrop of the receding storm. "I propose a partnership," he declared aloud. "Not just with the land but with you, the heart of this community. I want to show what we can build together, an agriculture that nourishes our bodies and our souls." The murmurs changed, an undercurrent whispering through the faces, hinting at interest mingled with disbelief. He watched as a woman near the front clutched her daughter tighter, skepticism casting a shadow over hope. Jack took a step forward, shifting his focus to her. "What if we turned a profit that supports not just our pads but the future our children deserve? We can integrate modern sustainability with the traditions you hold dear." Jack's mind raced as he envisioned workshops, hands-on demonstrations, and cooperative efforts that shared knowledge, placing his own journey as a testament. He could be an educator, a believer in the integrity of their culture. No longer a voiceless farmer, he felt he could rise as a steward of their collective well-being. He sensed a wave of curiosity developing in the crowd, spurred on by his passion. Would they be receptive to exploring alternatives? Could they withstand the fear of change, armed with the knowledge Jack was ready to share? He tightened his grip on his destiny, grasped the gnarled edges of the legacy he wanted to cultivate. Yet doubt coiled tight in his gut, another voice interjecting with disquieting questions. Was he truly capable of leading this initiative? Was there enough resilience in him, and in them, to withstand the inevitable hurdles? A glimmer of doubt passed through the crowd. Some were still entrenched in the familiar economic cycles that had kept them pinned. The lawyer smirked, sensing the flicker of uncertainty. "What will you do when it falters? You're playing with fire and might lose everything. You think a few words will make them forget the safety of our offer?" Jack's heart raced again, the pressure palpable like dampened air before a storm. This wasn't just a war of words anymore, it was a test of character, resilience, and faith. Not only in himself but in his fellow townsfolk. Then he committed to the moment. "If we stand together, I'm not afraid to fail. We'll fail and rise together. That's how our ancestors built this community, to learn from our mistakes, not shy away from them." As he stepped back from the precipice of fear, a ripple of energy flowed through him, strengthening his resolve. Transformative ideas began to crystallize in his mind. There would be meetings, explorations, demonstrations, and a shared commitment. But as he cast a final glance at the shifting expressions in the crowd, uncertainty still glimmered like rain on the pavement. Would they trust him? As the storm finally cleared and sunlight dared to break through, a silent question lingered. Could Jack truly shepherd this change, or would he find himself alone on this nascent path of transformation? His heart pounded against the weight of uncertainty. The journey ahead would undoubtedly test him, push him beyond his limits, and force him to confront the shadows lurking in his past. The moment of vindication was approaching, but first, he had to face a deeper truth waiting just beneath the surface. As the last ray of sunlight pierced through the dissipating clouds, Jack suddenly felt the weight of his ambitions settle squarely on his shoulders. Nothing about this current endeavor would be simple, yet the thought of standing still was even more repugnant. He had begun to realize that the path he envisaged extended far beyond fields of crops. It was planted deeply within the psyche of his community. The lawyer's smirk still etched in his mind. Jack's gaze swept the crowd again. Skepticism still hung thick in the air. He caught the eyes of several townspeople, all swimming in doubts of their own. Jack felt their fear tugging at him, and he questioned if he could indeed coax them into the light. "What are your priorities?" he wondered. It was easy for him to envision success, nurtured by passion, knowledge, and a firm belief in evolution. Would they be willing to tear away from the safety of the known? Or would he only receive polite applause on his journey to change? Determined to transform their silent apprehension into something purposeful, Jack prepared for the next step. A decision blossomed. He would hold an open forum, a chance for dialogue. They would speak of their concerns, inspirations, and ambitions, letting the communal wellspring become a foundation from which they could actively engage. The prospect invigorated him. He began to sketch out an agenda in his mind, visualizing a gathering place filled with possibility. He could share the economic landscape of sustainable farming, perhaps even invite guest speakers who could illustrate the successful pivot of similar communities. The fear, doubt, and mistrust would slowly melt under the warmth of shared stories and newfound ideas. Yet beneath his spirited resolve simmered an unsettling realization. The very act of calling for a forum would expose him to the scrutiny he secretly feared. How could he navigate the powerful forces of tradition while advocating for the unknown? Each personal experience he shared would lay him bare his past mistakes, the suffering, the struggle. He would be vulnerable, and vulnerability often attracted judgment. Yet what drove him onward was a deepening sense of purpose. This was about empowerment, not just for the townspeople but for himself. Could he truly guide the very people who once feared the change he represented? Each person's reaction would leave an indelible mark on him. As Jack steeled himself for the upcoming confrontation with the past, he thought about how he could redefine his narrative. Perhaps embracing the vulnerability would open doors to a deeper connection, a chance to be a mentor and a leader, rather than just a farmer facing legal woes. He could acknowledge his missteps and failures and present them as stepping stones toward the resilience they all desperately needed. Preparing to speak in front of the townsfolk was daunting. However, he sensed an undercurrent of support building, like a tide waiting to surge forward. Was it possible that their collective wisdom could seed new growth? The clash within him merged harmoniously with the ambition bubbling around him, setting the stage for something remarkable. But still, doubts loomed larger than life. What if his efforts to lead this initiative crumbled under the weight of old habits? Would he expose not only himself but also the vulnerability of an entire community? The tension wound tightly within him, and with a deep breath, he steeled himself for the conversation ahead. In that instant, Jack forced himself to address the colonizing fear creeping within him. The reckoning was near, and he had to be prepared for whatever came next. The time had come. Through his own willingness to confront the truth buried in the hearts of the townsfolk, he would pave a path for change, one that they might all be able to walk together. A sharp pang of realization struck as he prepared for the upcoming forum. The community's fears mirrored his. What if they remained unmoved? What if a hidden truth would crush their dreams before they even began? The stakes felt higher than ever. As he squared his shoulders and pondered one final question, was he truly ready for the journey ahead? Or was this just the beginning of a much darker struggle? Jack stood in front of the dilapidated community hall, its peeling paint and empty windows mimicking the uncertainty that had settled within him. The smell of wet earth filled the air, mingling with the faint scent of fear hanging like a cloud over this gathering, a gathering that could solidify his future or unravel it completely. He took a deep breath, feeling the chill of the evening seep into his bones, and reminded himself of the stakes at hand. It was more than just a meeting. It was a pivot point. As townsfolk trickled in, their chatter muted and hesitant, Jack wrestled with the impulse to retreat back into the shadows of his own self-doubt. He reminded himself that the path he had chosen demanded not only courage but the ability to hold space for vulnerability. Here he was, a man with a passion for transformation, standing before a group that had long viewed him as little more than an outsider. He could feel their entrenched skepticism like a palpable wall, pushing back against his every intention. With the forum set to start, he glanced at his notes. Points of discussion swirled in his mind. He would share how resilience had been the bedrock of his own journey, not just as a farmer but as a person who had faced loss and failure. Those chapters of his life might resonate with their struggles, he thought. His narrative could bridge the gap between their skepticism and his vision. But first, he would need to breach the wall of mistrust. He cleared his throat, and as the murmurs around him shifted to silence, he felt the familiar grip of anxiety tighten around him. This could either be an opportunity or a wreckage of disappointment. Jack opened his mouth, the first words draping like a shroud over the room. "Thank you all for coming tonight. I know we have our doubts, and I'm here to talk about those." The initial reactions were mixed, some people nodding, while others crossed their arms, clearly bracing for confrontation. Jack pushed through the tension, drawing on the memories of his first failed harvest, the taste of defeat lingering on his tongue as vividly as the crisp autumn air. "I failed," he confessed, his voice wavering. "I've stood in fields that yielded nothing and wrestled with the specter of abandonment." Jack could see the flickers of curiosity amid the skepticism. He shared moments of vulnerability, revealing cracks in his own armor and allowing himself to be seen. Each word peeled back layers of his immovable exterior. He wasn't just the man they expected him to be, he was one of them. They could relate to his fears, his hunger for transformation. It resonated within them. But as he spoke, the familiar shadow of self-doubt crept back in. What if they only heard him as a broken farmer, not as a visionary? What if his vulnerabilities only reinforced their reservations? In a moment of clarity, he pivoted, his thoughts igniting a spark within him. "Together we can cultivate a new future." He laid out his vision for sustainable farming not just as an economic choice but as a moral imperative. Jack knew that to evoke real change, he needed them to see the tangible benefits. He planned to show them more than just theories. He would present evidence, the stories of towns that had embraced new methods and reaped their rewards. As he spoke about community-supported agriculture and innovative marketing strategies, the crowd's skepticism began to ebb, replaced by a growing intrigue. Jack sensed the shift and pushed ahead, each detail weaving a more intricate tapestry of possibility. Yet the question still loomed. Would he manage to convince those within these walls to step bravely into uncharted territory? Yet, as the meeting drew to a close, Jack could not shake the lingering fear. The air was thick with unresolved tension, and he could feel the balance precariously wavering. Would the townsfolk echo his vision, or would they drown in their old habits? As Jack caught the eye of the lawyer who had once belittled his ambitions, the confrontation crystallized before him. He had to evolve not just as a leader but as a man, breaking free from the shackles of judgment. With their reactions still swirling in his mind, he faced the reality that the real battle was just beginning. He stepped away from the podium, heart racing with anticipation and dread. Could he galvanize a movement from this fledgling interest? Or was this just another failure hiding beneath the guise of hope? The night wasn't over. The stakes had never felt higher. As he stood at the precipice of his own ambition, Jack grappled with questions that loomed larger than life itself. The moment had arrived to face the man that once sought to dismiss him, and he would do so with uncompromising courage. Would it be enough to spark a change that finally took root? The moment Jack stepped away from the podium, a whirlwind of uncertainty enveloped him. Each face he had just seen, some intrigued, others hardened by skepticism, flashed through his mind, crystallizing the weight of responsibility he now carried. He had laid bare his soul, reaching for a collective awakening, but the outcome remained shrouded in ambiguity. As the hall emptied, Jack lingered at the periphery, observing groups of townsfolk discussing his ideas in hushed tones, their expressions oscillating between curiosity and reticence. It was a raw reflection of his own internal struggle. He had faced his fears by sharing his vulnerabilities, drawing connections between their challenges and his aspirations. But would they convert that curiosity into action? The lawyer approached him, marching purposefully, his presence looming like a storm cloud. Jack felt the familiar tension in his chest tighten. This man represented a powerful portion of the community's resistance. He had repeatedly belittled Jack's vision. Jack braced himself for the critical moment that had been lurking in the shadows since the start of the meeting. "Interesting pitch tonight," the lawyer said, his tone measured but tinged with sarcasm. "But do you really think the town would benefit from something like what you're proposing? Revolutionizing our agricultural methods? Sounds awfully naive." The derision dripped from his words, widening the chasm Jack sought to bridge. Jack inhaled deeply, the rush of adrenaline sharpening his focus. This was the confrontation he needed. "I know it sounds ambitious," he replied, steadying his voice. "But what's naive is ignoring the shifting realities of agriculture. Farmers everywhere are adapting or being left behind. I can't stand by while our community clings to outdated methods out of fear." Each word dripped with the sincerity he had unearthed, confident yet vulnerable. The lawyer's eyes narrowed, scrutinizing Jack. So you think you're the solution to all our problems? Farm fresh utopia. He chuckled, dismissively. All it takes is one bad season to wipe out optimism. Jack's heart raced, fueled by the need to challenge that cynicism. But it only takes one good season to inspire people. I'm not asking for blind faith. I'm offering a choice, a chance to invest in a future that can sustain us. His voice was rising, propelled by passion. In that moment, it felt less like a conversation and more like a pebble thrown into a still pond, a ripple of change, or perhaps a storm. For the briefest moment, the lawyer's facade faltered. Jack sensed the tiniest crack in the man's unwavering confidence, curiosity flickering behind his eyes. What if, despite their differences, a part of the lawyer yearned for change too? Perhaps he was just as trapped by conventions as Jack once had been. I have some community-supported farms I can show you, Jack continued, ignoring the weight of doubt threatening to anchor him. Stories that illustrate how change has empowered those who were once as skeptical as you are. I'm not just hoping for support. I want to show what is possible. If you're open to it, let us explore this together. Silence hung between them like a thin thread, taut and trembling. Jack didn't know if he was winning the battle or merely echoing words against stone. He realized then that his journey was far from over, that what had begun as a vision was morphing into a challenge, one that tested his resilience and commitment to growth more than he could have imagined. Let me think about it, the lawyer finally replied. His tone softened, but his posture still guarded. As he walked away, Jack couldn't discern whether this was a victory or a delay. In the days that followed, each moment felt like a grappling match with his own beliefs. He needed to launch a demonstration, a chance to embody his ideals and visibly demonstrate the strength of his vision. But the prospect still terrified him. The echoes of the lawyer's voice haunted him. What if this was yet another dream destined to fail? He needed a plan that called upon not just his passion, but also his expertise. Realizing he couldn't just rally support through rhetoric alone, Jack set his sights on establishing a small test plot, a living testament to what could be achieved through innovative farming. But he understood that he couldn't do it alone. He needed hands, willingness, and most importantly, the trust of those who had doubted him before. Reflecting over his journey, it was painfully clear his greatest challenge lay not just in proving the merits of new methods, but also in urging the community to confront their embedded fears about failure. With his vision growing clearer, Jack forged ahead with renewed determination, mapping out the steps for his project. He felt the hunger for transformation deep within him, yet the gravity of self-doubt followed closely behind. The task ahead called for not only determination but also strategic collaboration. As he stared at his plans, a spark ignited within. The time had come to confront his deepest fear, the idea that he might not be enough to overcome a lifetime of skepticism. What if he failed again? But what if this time he succeeded? There was no certainty, only the dawning realization of the profound weight of change, both personal and collective. Jack turned away from his notes, the tension swirling around him thickening, amplifying the sense of urgency that coursed through his veins. He needed allies, and time was not on his side. As the sun dipped below the horizon, he felt the pressure to act escalated, igniting a fresh resolve within him. What methods would he employ to gather support? The plan had to solidify soon. Drawing away from the cluttered desk, Jack knew it was time to confront not only the opinion of the lawyer, but the perceptions of every member of the community. They had seen him as an outsider, now he needed to truly become one of them. But first, there were deeper challenges ahead that demanded both strategy and courage. The foundation for his vision was forming, but could he rise to the occasion once again, or would the echoes of fear drown him out? Jack stood poised on the brink of possibility, ready to leap into the unknown as the shadows of doubt loomed closer than ever before. The moment had arrived to act, but he could feel the winds shifting. Would they become a tempest, or the push he needed to soar? Jack spent the night restless, his thoughts spiraling in an unholy tango of hope and despair. Every crackle of his aging radiator felt amplified, echoing through the dimly lit confines of his office. The challenge ahead loomed like a jagged boulder, heavy and unyielding. Could he truly foster change? Or was he merely creating grand illusions in a town resistant to evolution? At dawn, he rose with the sun flickering through the window, illuminating the dust motes suspended in the air around him. Stepping outside, the crisp morning air hit him with sharp clarity, invigorating and daunting in equal measure. If he was to make a tangible mark, he needed a plan that was deliberate and impactful. Strategies that would not only showcase innovative practices but also inspire faith in a skeptical community. Jack began his day at Clover Farms, a family-owned property on the outskirts of town that had once been a thriving venture but was now struggling under the weight of outdated practices. He had long admired the resilience of the farmer, Ethan, an older man with years of hard work etched into his deep lines. Jack's knuckles rapped on the weathered door. "Jack, what brings you here so early?" Ethan greeted him, a mixture of curiosity and hospitality in his voice. "I need your help," Jack replied, honesty resonating in every word. "I'm planning on starting a demonstration plot to showcase regenerative farming methods. I'd love for you to be part of it." Ethan's brow furrowed, skepticism evident. "You know the stakes, right? Trying something new in a place like ours is risky. Folks won't take kindly to it if it doesn't pan out." The familiar weight of doubt clawed at Jack's insides, but he steeled his resolve. "I know, but if we show them that these methods can work, that they can thrive alongside innovation, we can change the narrative. Let us show them what's possible." A flicker of intrigue sparked in Ethan's worn eyes. "But it won't be easy, Jack. You think you're ready for that? You're not just fighting the lawyer, you're up against generations of tradition." "I have to be ready," Jack insisted, his voice gaining strength. "This isn't just about the farming, it's about the future of our community. Our families deserve better than falling behind." Ethan studied him, weighing the gravity of Jack's words. Moments passed in silence before the older man sighed heavily. "All right, count me in. But you'll have to win over the rest of the town, starting with my neighbors." As their discussion deepened, Jack felt a shift within himself. Here, amidst the sprawling fields and rich soil, lay his opportunity not just to implement change but to build a bridge with those who had watched from the sidelines. Inspiration coursed through his veins, urging him to craft a narrative that resonated beyond mere statistics and theories. After securing Ethan's commitment, Jack spent the subsequent days sketching out plans for the demonstration plot. He envisioned rows of vibrant produce, colorful illustrations of growth, not just from the ground but also from hearts once entrenched in doubt. Yet, as he poured every ounce of effort into preparation, dread lingered. What if the project failed? The consequences would extend beyond his personal ambitions and touch the lives of everyone involved. Jack needed to muster all the courage he had cultivated, for it was clear that this endeavor was as much about personal growth as it was about transforming the skepticism surrounding him. As he finalized arrangements for a community meeting, nerves pulsed through him, demanding to be acknowledged. Would the townsfolk, emboldened by the challenges around them, rally to support a cause that was undeniably urgent? Or would they stand firm in their fears, dismissing the possibility of change? When the day finally arrived, the air tingled with anticipation and apprehension. Jack stood before a growing crowd, understanding that this was more than a project. It was his moment of truth, a crossroads that could either solidify his place among them or cast him back into the shadows of uncertainty. As he took a deep breath to begin speaking, each heartbeat echoed the pressure of potential failure, all his aspirations and credibility hanging delicately in the balance. The time had come to confront the doubts collectively, to address not just the community's fears but his own as well. Would they respond to the hope he offered, or would they cling to their mistrust? Jack was about to find out if he could take flight among the clouds of doubt, or if he would, once again, fall to earth in despair. Jack's voice quivered as he approached the mic, trying to anchor his thoughts amid the growing tension that prickled in the air. The crowd's skepticism loomed like an invisible wall, but he reminded himself that if few would listen, he could make a difference, even if it was small. "Thank you all for coming today," he began, his voice steadying with each word. He scanned the faces before him, some curious, some hostile, and others, like Ethan, filled with cautious hope. I'm here to talk about a project that might just reshape the way we think about farming in our town. I'm not just asking for change. I'm offering an opportunity for all of us to thrive." Glimmers of interest flitted through the sea of skeptical expressions. He shared the vision of his demonstration plot, painting vivid pictures of lush crops and sustainable practices that could rejuvenate their land. He spoke of regenerative methods that not only promise better yield but also nourish the earth for future generations. But as he unveiled the advantages, he could feel an internal battle, an echoing voice of doubt whispering, "What if they don't believe you?" As he continued, he noticed murmurs among the audience, and a few individuals shifted uncomfortably, their arms crossed defiantly. Jack's heart raced. The fear of rejection twisted his stomach. He recalibrated, channeling his passions into a raw declaration. "Look, we all know our farms are struggling. Things can't stay the same. I'm not here to ask you to blindly follow me. I'm simply asking for a chance to show you." One voice pierced through the mixture of uncertainty. A woman named Clara, a lifetime resident known for her disapproval of anything veering off traditional paths. "And what makes you think your new ideas will work here? We've tried new things before and they've failed." Jack locked eyes with her, determination crystallizing within. "I understand your concerns, Clara, but think about it. What do we have to lose by at least trying? If we fail, we learn and can adapt. But if we succeed, we place Clover Farms back on the map." His challenge drifted into the crowd, reverberating against their skepticism. Encouraged by his own words, he outlined a plan how they could work together, testing methods step by step. With each passing moment, Jack's initial fear transformed into a growing confidence. This wasn't merely about farming. It was about rallying a community and inviting everyone to invest in their own futures, redefining their identities from passive bystanders to active participants in a vibrant change. The meeting wound down, and while Jack couldn't read every face, the previously rigid stances softened slightly. As he stepped off the stage, fatigue washed over him, mingled with a sense of accomplishment. Had he hooked them, or was it wishful thinking? He found Ethan waiting, a slight smile cracking the farmer's weathered face. "You held your own up there. They listened." "I hope it's enough," Jack replied, rubbing the back of his neck, exhaustion creeping in. "But I'm not naive. This is just the beginning. I need to be ready for the pushback when it arrives." Ethan nodded, the wisdom of experience etched into his expression. "You know, everyone will have their own doubts. You'll need to keep showing them why it matters. Just remember, change doesn't happen overnight. It's built bit by bit." As the dusk swept across the sky, Jack's resolve deepened. He knew the road ahead would be fraught with resistance and careful negotiations, but he was determined to rise above it. Every conversation, every challenge would contribute to his growth. And then he wondered what hidden talents might emerge as he navigated this tumultuous journey of transformation. Would the struggle ahead unveil unexpected strengths within himself, testing not just his resolve, but his understanding of what it meant to lead? The questions loomed like shadows, urging him forward. As Jack gazed onto the horizon, a flicker of trepidation danced in his chest, igniting a flame of anticipation within. How would he confront the deeper layers of resistance ahead? Would his past haunt him, or would it arm him with wisdom as he plunged into this new initiation? He took a deep breath, the realization settling in. This was going to demand everything he had. The next challenge awaited him. What would it unlock? Jack spent the following days reeling from the intensity of the meeting. The energy of the room pulsed in his mind. He replayed every moment over and over, analyzing his expressions and the crowd's reactions. He'd felt a shift, however small, and that drove him into action. Ethan's words echoed in his thoughts. Change took time, but it also demanded energy and determination. Jack decided to dedicate himself to this cause, throwing himself into uncharted territories of research and community engagement. He began by creating a visual representation of his ideas. Charts illustrating potential yields, images of thriving crops, and testimonials from successful farmers using sustainable practices elsewhere. With limited experience in public relations, Jack felt the pressure. He found himself grappling with self-doubt, wondering if he'd be taken seriously. Every time he sat down to create content, the impulse to delete everything surged. But deep down, he knew he had to push through the fear, lingering in the uncomfortable space of uncertainty. If he faltered now, what message would that send to those he hoped to inspire? Finding common ground with local farmers was another challenge he faced. Many were stuck in their ways, resistant to ideas that had them questioning decades of tradition. To begin, he reached out to several farmers, inviting them for coffee or a casual meeting. Each encounter presented a mix of apprehension and curiosity. Some listened, while others scoffed. One afternoon, he met with a farmer named Ben, known for his resolve and strong opinions. Ben's skepticism radiated from him, but Jack sensed a glimmer of interest underneath the tough exterior. As they talked, Jack shared his research and painted the picture again, emphasizing not just the techniques but the resilience they could foster within the community. He spoke about the interconnectedness of soil health and their economy, a narrative that seemed to resonate, however faintly. Yet, even amidst the slight nods Ben offered, Jack felt the tension. It was a game of chess, and every move mattered. With every discussion, he was spinning a web of relationships, and he was acutely aware that every farmer's story was intertwined. He needed to listen as much as he spoke, absorbing their concerns and addressing their fears, thus turning the tide from skepticism to possibility. These interactions ignited an unexpected capacity for empathy within him. The stories of struggles over the years of dead crops and dwindling incomes showed him a side of farming he had never fully understood. It wasn't just about soil and seeds. It was about livelihoods, family legacies, and deeply rooted identities. As he continued to forge connections, he discovered an innate ability to communicate his vision clearly and passionately. What surprised him most was the willingness of some to reconsider their entrenched positions when confronted with a new idea presented effectively. Rather than feeling like a lone voice in the void, he began seeing himself as a guide. Then one evening, after a long day of canvassing for support, Jack stood outside under a sprawling sky filled with stars, feeling both small and infinite. The small victories started adding up, boosting not just his confidence but also igniting a flicker of hope in the community. He knew he still had miles to go, and there were formidable obstacles ahead, but something in him had shifted. That evening, he reflected on the evolving nature of his quest. Each conversation not only opened doors but also chipped away at the armor of self-doubt he had worn for so long. He realized he was giving people something valuable, hope for a sustainable future. But then he felt the creeping shadow of an unresolved issue. The most formidable obstacle was yet to come: Clara. How would he confront someone so deeply entrenched in their views? Would she dismiss everything he had worked for, or would she become a surprising ally? As he arose the following morning, the weight of that question hovered in his mind. What would it take to change her? Heart and mind? How could he find the right approach to unlock her perspective? The pulsing drive within him surged. He had to find out. He took a deep breath, ready for whatever lay ahead. Jack stood at the forefront of the thriving demonstration plot, the fruits of his labor glittering under the sun like trophies of hard-won determination. Each row of vibrant vegetables told the story of a journey fraught with challenges and triumphs. He had physically transformed the land, but more importantly, he had ignited a transformation within himself. He felt the recognition swell in his chest as neighbors wandered through the rows, their skepticism beginning to morph into curiosity and, in many cases, admiration. His own metamorphosis had begun with a desperate battle against internal fears, but it had blossomed into an unwavering commitment to progress that bridged the gap between himself and his community. As he walked through the rows, he marveled at how far he had come. Not just as a farmer but as a leader, a visionary willing to confront discomfort in pursuit of collective growth. Weeks had passed since the initial community meeting, each day revealing subtle victories. Jack had successfully debunked myths and invited neighbors to embrace innovation. He recalled the evidence he had painstakingly compiled, testimonials of those who had harnessed modern techniques to yield astonishing results. These narratives became a foundation upon which he could build trust. Yet, the challenge that felt most pressing was Clara. She often lingered in his thoughts like a specter, a reminder of the hurdles that still lay before him. If he could get through to her, convincing her that change could yield real benefits, he could reach others still trapped under the heavy weight of tradition. He had learned that successfully engaging Clara required rectitude and empathy. She deserved respect not merely as an antagonist but as a fellow farmer whose journey was intertwined with his own. With resolve anchoring his steps, Jack decided to invite Clara to the demonstration. He wanted to create a space where dialogue could flourish, a chance to break down walls instead of reinforcing them. The day of her arrival, anticipation hummed through the community like electricity. As she approached, Jack's heart raced. This was not merely an invitation but a declaration of faith. He greeted her, sincerity in his eyes. "I wanted you here because I genuinely believe these methods can help all of us. I respect your experience, and I want to share what we've accomplished together." Clara studied him, skepticism evident in her posture. "What evidence do you have that this will be worth our time, Jack?" she asked, arms crossed tightly over her chest. Jack held her gaze with steady determination. "Clara, look around. These crops are flourishing. Our yields have risen, and we're not just planting more, we're enriching the soil and working with sustainability in mind. You once said farming isn't just a job. It's a legacy. Let us assure a legacy worth passing down." As they walked through the rows, Jack elaborated on the methods they had implemented, dampening the fear of failure with tangible results. The vibrant colors surrounding them illustrated his vision. He could see Clara's initial resistance wavering as she examined the plants, her curiosity piqued. He shared stories of the families, their deep-rooted hopes, and how sustainable practices helped shape their futures. With every sentence, he felt the connection grow stronger. The whisper of doubt that had haunted him was muted by the growing realization that he was no longer merely pitching an idea. He was sparking a collaborative conversation. As they reached the last row, Clara stopped, pondering over a particularly healthy batch of kale. "I can't say I'm sold yet," she admitted thoughtfully, looking out over the field. "But I see the potential. It's a beginning, and I might be willing to give it a shot with reservation." Jack's heart leapt at her openness. "That's all I ask, an opportunity to partner together, to learn from each other. We can confront challenges as a community." This exchange created ripples of dialogue among the other townsfolk, who witnessed the budding connection between him and Clara. Many took note as they realized the importance of collaborative support. No one had to feel alone in the quest for change. More and more members began voicing their ambitions, inspired not just by Jack's journey but also by the sincerity displayed among neighbors. Eventually, they collectively invested in community-supported agriculture initiatives, allowing them to share in both triumphs and challenges. Jack stood back, recognizing the evolution around him that had begun with his own leap into vulnerability. He had transcended from the silent worker in the fields to a beacon of transformation. In the following months, the community began to flourish. Healthy harvests became synonymous with their names. Their acknowledgement of collective progress cultivated confidence and prompted unwavering pride. They celebrated not only individual victories, but also the shared journey toward reimagined sustainability. Jack had successfully secured a place for himself, a farmer not merely overlooked but valued. Not only had he silenced the scoffers, the embodiment of the community's previous unity in discontent safeguarded a renewed future filled with promise. As he surveyed the landscape transformed by what teamwork had wrought, he realized the profound lessons he had learned along this arduous path. The importance of resilience, the power of empathy, and the undeniable capacity for change when driven by sincerity. This transformation hadn't just proved his worth to the town. It had deepened his understanding of himself, solidifying his identity as a leader, an advocate, and a farmer dedicated to progress. The connections woven through the soil of their collective efforts promised a future where they would rise together, side by side, transcending doubt and celebrating growth. Now, Jack faced the horizon with a sense of purpose and satisfaction that was palpable. Each step forward painted a different shade of fulfillment, illuminating vividly the journey he had undertaken. He felt whole, recognized, and genuinely connected not just to the land, but to his community and himself. This was his moment. You need to subscribe now to keep following incredible stories of personal growth and transformation. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and support powerful narratives like this one. Comment your thoughts. We want to hear your reactions and theories about how change can occur. Finally, don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who could benefit from this inspiring conclusion.